Okay, John here. Uh, True crime podcast, finding my brother's killer. Uh, we got to get right back into the autopsy thing. Okay, so as I mentioned in the last video, the medical examiner that performed the initial examination also performed the second examination. This in the industry is completely unheard of, apparently. Everybody I've mentioned this to, they've got a problem with it. Here's the thing about the actual report. When I've seen autopsies, when I've seen pictures of autopsies, when I've seen autopsy reports, it's an all encompassing medical examination of a human body. A typical autopsy package has, my understanding, anywhere between 50 and 75 pictures. And these will be pictures of slices of organs, uh, maybe slides that have been pictures have been taken of cells on slides, stained, whatnot, stuff like this. Uh, Maybe there'll be a close up of, I mentioned, the brain. Maybe there'll be stuff, the heart, the kidneys, the blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. And there'll be pictures of this, as well as measurements and weights and medical observations and stuff like that. There was one picture of my brother uh, being autopsied. Or so we think. Now, here's why I say it that way. The picture is a torso with from about here to about just below the belly button removed. Okay, the whole chest plate has been removed. Now, I'm going to show you the one photo of my brother's actual dead body, but it's not going to be what you think. Let me show you that now. I think this is the only tasteful way that I can convey this. We're not going to get into blood and guts, but I need to show you this picture now. Okay, I'm going to show it to you again in a second. I want you to notice how fat my brother is. Okay, this is a side view. I'm going to zoom in a little. Notice the curve of the belly. That's not gas or anything or bloating. That's fat. My brother was a fat ass. Okay, let's look at that again. Okay, now I showed you that not necessarily for shock value, but because I want to tell you that this picture inside the torso, there was really no fat in there. And I'm going to show you right now what fat looks like in a torso. Okay, so yeah, fat looks like sort of margarine-colored packing peanuts that are dissolving inside the torso or whatever part of the body you're talking about. This picture of the insides had none of that. Now, the other thing is, if you knew my brother, you know that he had been smoking cigarettes and marijuana and whatnot since at least age 18. That's 20 years. Okay? 20 years of heavy smoking. And he was the kind of guy who could pick up a bottle of Crown Royal and drink it by himself out of the bottle. And he would get shit-faced, and he would do that frequently. And then he would get out of control and go battle with the cops and bite people and all kinds of crazy, fucked up shit. I say this because if you know my brother, you know that he was a drinker and a smoker. And I say this because in this torso, the liver was pristine. The liver looked like some textbook liver, as opposed to a liver that would show signs of alcohol-related damage. And I'm going to show you a pristine next to a damaged liver now. Also, as I mentioned, for somebody who had been smoking, basically joints out of a bowl, out of a pipe, what have you, basically the equivalent of filterless whatever, for the last 20 years, you would expect to see some lung damage. The lungs were pristine. Okay? Now, what am I saying? Well, When I shared this with my older brother, who's an actual doctor, he said one of two things. He said, one, there is no way to tell if that picture, the body in that picture, is our actual brother, let alone whether that person is male or female. We don't know. We don't know if it's Yali, and we don't know if that's a female. We don't know what that is, because what we expect to find, we're not finding. Now, the other thing about my brother that was not mentioned in this report, because it was so generic, it was lacking all that gross information as far as the slides, the pictures, the weights, the stained cell cultures, all of that. If you knew my brother personally, you know that when we adopted him at 1.5 years, just prior to that, we adopted him out of El Salvador. Just prior to when we adopted him, there was an earthquake in San Salvador. And the building that he was living in, part of it collapsed. And part of it nailed him in the head right there, such that he had a big scar right there. I'm going to show you a picture of it now. Okay, so aside from that big scar, my brother also had, he had done some damage to his hand. What did he do? He punched a window or something? I don't know. He did a job on the tendons, such that one of his hands could only like do this. I'll show you a picture of that. Okay, and then there was another thing where my brother did something to, I guess, his elbow or something. Uh, and there was that. Let's look at that. Now, in addition to all of this, because my brother came from the third world and had spent the first 1.5 years or whatever of his life drinking shit, God only knows what. Maybe he was having baby bottles full of Fanta or something. His teeth were a shambles. So, excuse me, his orthodontia should have been mentioned in this autopsy report. His broken bones, he had a broken ankle, his tendon shit, his scars, all should have been diagrammed and mentioned in this autopsy. And they are not. In fact, the second autopsy is based upon information provided from the first autopsy. And the other thing that my older brother said is, he said this report is so lacking in detailed information that it almost comes off more like a boilerplate or like a template that you would pull up in your word processor and then insert stuff into. This is not the complete work. This is the start of what should have been completed and apparently wasn't. Let's see. What else can I tell you? Now, so the autopsy report was shit. The drug findings were over the top. The doctor, there was some weird stuff there with the doctor doing both reports. Now, I talked to her. This is the last thing I'll mention here, and then we'll cut away. I talked to the doctor on the phone for about half an hour who performed the medical examination, Dr. Dvorak. Blah, 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 blah. We just talk shit. Blah, 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 blah. Tell me about this. Tell me about the other thing. Blah, 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 blah. She said two things of interest. She said, one, that in her opinion, he was sitting on the edge of the bed with his knees bent on the end and his feet flat on the ground, and he just flopped over to the left. And I asked her if she would look at the pictures of his body on the bed again. She did and said, okay, well, maybe he was same idea, but this time with his legs bent underneath him. Sort of like, you might, if you were like, I don't know, let's say you were a 14-year-old, like on your bed, like with your feet tucked underneath you when you were still flexible and whatnot. And that then he flopped over as well. neither of which I believe happened. Now, the other thing that I asked her is, I said to her, is this it? Is this document written in stone, or what is this? And she said, no, 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 not at all. Because she says she gets information coming from later down the pipe that may change the findings. So she said this is in no way written in stone. That if something new should surface later on that changes any of this, that goes into consideration and will change the mode or means of death. Because I wanted it changed from accidental overdose to homicide, to murder. And I hadn't discussed that with her yet because I didn't know about it yet. But that's why I asked her. I like, can I dig further and find you shit that you may consider, and we'll go back and change this document? And she said, John, if you do that, yes, 100% yes, I will change this document. It's a living document, not written in stone. Good luck. And so away I went. Okay, I'm going to end this here. Boy, I don't know what to do next. We may need to do third part of the autopsy. I think we will. It's bad.